Welcome to the BBOWT podcast, our local nature-related podcast. Focusing on our three counties, Berkshire, Buckinghamshire and Oxfordshire, we'll be looking at what can be seen locally on your patch and also on what people can do to help wildlife in your own space.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the BBOWT podcast. Today I am joined by Kate Sheard and Tara Higgs. Hello both.
Hi Ed, how are you?
Hi there.
I'm well, thank you. So Kate, Community Wildlife Manager over in Bucks.
I am. Thank you. So this is my second podcast, so thank you for welcoming me back for the second time. I obviously did all right first time round.
You did.
So yeah, so thank you. So I'm still busy working from home across the border in Bedfordshire. I'm normally based at College Lake on the border of Buckinghamshire. So yeah, it's been quite nice the past few weeks, being able to get out a bit more, do a bit more exploring, and I've kind of just been enjoying being able to see a few more people, have a picnic with a few friends, and get up to Milton Keynes. We've been out having a few walks. In and around Dunstable as well, but what I've noticed is there's an awful lot of oxeye daisies and poppies that have just appeared over the last week or so. So the vegetation's changing, which is really nice.
Yeah, it is. No, near us, we were out for a walk at the weekend, and there's a field which is just covered in like poppies, and I think it's wild chamomile. I don't know whether it's by design or by benign neglect. I think probably the latter, because I have a horrible feeling the site's marked for development. But at the moment, it's just stunning. It's just a huge field of poppies, really glorious. And what about you, Tara? Wild Banbury Project Officer. What is Wild Banbury?
Hi Ed, yes. I work in the Banbury area, so it's very much a urban living landscape, you can say, in that I'm all about helping people discover the green spaces within the town and really getting the most out of the nature that's basically on their doorsteps. So it's all about work parties, getting them outside, doing practical work in the parks. We have a big wildlife section within the parks that the Banbury Town Council set aside for us. And we also do a lot of events, so a lot of people engagement, getting people to come out into the parks and learn what's there basically, and hopefully inspire them to do something at home for nature. So I really like getting out there and talking to people. It's a great job.
Spice Ball is fantastic, isn't it? Because although it is technically an urban park, there's like really like wild areas to it. You've got the river coming straight through the centre, haven't you? So.
Yeah, Spice Ball is pretty much a country park, and it's a massive green space right in the middle of Banbury, so anyone can get to it. It's very easy to access. It's got lovely walking paths on one side, which is more amenity, but on the other side it's very wild, and we've been working hard to enhance it for wildlife and make it even wilder, you could say, but still accessible.
Yeah, no, I really enjoy my trips up to Spice Ball, and of course there's always the added advantage of Banbury cakes as well.
Not Mr. Banbury cakes.
Yeah. So again, thank you both for coming on today. Today we are going to be focusing on one very special creature in particular. It's been voted Britain's favourite mammal. I think a couple of years ago in the BBC Wildlife magazine poll, it was actually voted Britain's sort of national species. It is, of course, Britain's only spiny mammal, the hedgehog. So what do we think it is about hedgehogs that makes them so popular? What is their enduring appeal?
I think for me, I obviously... Well, I might be older than some of our listeners, or maybe younger, who knows, but I'm the other side of 40. But so I grew up reading Beatrix Potter and Mrs. Tiggy Winkle, so that was a big part of my childhood. And I think actually these stories that are based on, wildlife and creatures and bring them to life, it always makes them more special to me personally. And I always remember having them in the garden up in Yorkshire as a child. So I think it's that childhood connection for me. Probably like most wildlife. That's why I do the job that I do, is because I love wildlife and it was from my childhood.
I would say hedgehogs are so popular because they are so unique. It's UK's only spiny mammal, so it's quite different from everything else. It's also quite small and cute, so the children love it. It's very easy to, if you're lucky enough to have one in your area, you're more likely to see one in your garden than any other type of wildlife. So it's quite accessible, I would say. And like I say, it's special because it's covered in spikes.
Yeah, fascinating. How many spikes does it actually have?
Well, the spines on an adult hedgehog can range from 5,000 to 7,000, depending on the size of the hedgehog, because they all come in different shapes and sizes, don't they? So that's a lot of spines, isn't it?
Yeah, they're made of they're made of the same material as fingernails, aren't they?
Yes,
yeah.
They are made from keratin, which is like our hair and nails, and they're hollow, and they're about 2 centimetres long and sharp, we can say.
I think you said the other day when we were chatting, they can move them independently, can't they? You said, were you pulling my leg?
Yeah, I thought you said that they had were they all connected to different muscles or something or other? But I just think it's fantastic that they can curl up in a ball and they use their spines for defense from other creatures or dogs or whatever else. So I think they always look really cute when you see photos of them curled up in a little ball as well.
Yeah, because some of the folklore I was reading, I think it's Pliny the Elder in his Historia Naturalis, I think it was in the 1st century. I think he writes about hedgehogs, having the ability to climb some apple trees, and they would knock the apples out of the tree and use their spines to impale the apples and carry it back to its nest, which is obviously nonsense. I mean, one, they're carnivores, and two, they just don't do that. But so the spines are used for defence almost exclusively.
Yeah, I'll say spines because they're very good. They curl up into a ball and nothing will show. No, you won't get the nose or the legs sticking out. So it's very good, and they're very sharp, like I mentioned. And each spine can point in a different direction, so it's very effective at keeping things out, really. And like I say, it is the only mammal in this country that has spines. So they also act as a bit of a shock absorber, so if it falls from a wall or height, it will actually just bounce a little bit. It doesn't harm the hedgehog, so it's really good.
Because they can climb quite well, can't they? And swim. I mean, they're really, great little creatures. Yeah,
they are good. They've got quite long legs, really, and they can climb up little walls and stuff in the garden.
And they need as long legs as well, because they travel quite far as well, aren't they? I mean, they're not limited to like a single garden, for example. They've got quite a large roaming radius.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that is it between 1 kilometre and 2 kilometres a night or something like that? Which
it's 1 to 2.
Yeah, between 1 and 2. So I think that's an amazing distance for such a tiny little creature. And like you just said, Ed, that's the main reason why just one garden's not enough. That they do need quite big spaces to roam around.
And they're looking for food, I guess, when they're hunting. So what are they eating? Because got quite a wide range of...
Hedgehogs really, really love beetles, I would say. Even though they're famous for eating snails and slugs, I would say their favourite diet is beetles and earthworms. And like I say, they have to travel quite a long way to find enough beetles, worms, and other soil invertebrates, you can say, to feast upon. And you're not going to find them all in one garden, really.
And this time of year as well, will they be out and about a little bit more? Because this is breeding season, isn't it? June is traditionally when the hoglets are born.
Yes, June is the season where all the hoglets appear, and you can see them quite often in the news and stuff of hedgehogs being seen out with baby hedgehogs, and obviously quite a few reports of hedgehogs being disturbed by garden activity. If you decided to redesign your garden with your shed or something, you might come across a nest full of hedgehogs at this time of year.
Okay. And what and as I say, obviously we've talked about them being in gardens. If people suspect they've got hedgehogs in their gardens, yeah, we got any observation tips we can share? What should people be looking out for?
So there's quite a few things that you might see. If it's been quite wet or it's a bit muddy, you might find footprints. I always struggle a bit with footprints and have to always double check in a book or on the internet. But I do think they look like tiny little hands. They're so cute, and as well as the footprints, they might find poo, which is always a good way of knowing what creatures are in your garden. And again, I always have to double check so I know what I'm talking about. But because they eat in a lot of beetles and insects and that type of thing, that you'll end up with all the kind of like the exoskeletons in their poo. So they're often shiny. I was just reading, and they say that they can vary in colour depending on what they've been eating. So something like dark brown, grey or black, and they tend to be probably about the size of your little finger. Is that what you were saying, Tara? But
yeah, usually your little finger, so not massive, and they shouldn't smell so bad. So I never clue.
And I was reading as well that sometimes they might look like a tiny little black slug on your lawn, because they can be anything up to probably like 5 centimeters, something like that. But I know a lot of my friends further up the county, around Bedford and up in Milton Keynes, they've been seeing quite a lot of hedgehogs out and about, maybe late afternoon. So whether they're looking for more food because they've got babies or they're pregnant, that type of thing, because most of the time they are nocturnal and come out when it's dusk or dark. So I think people are seeing them while it's still daylight at this time of year, when they're looking for more food.
Yeah. And should people be concerned about that? Because I remember, visiting friends a couple of summers ago up in Middlesbrough, and middle of the day, a hedgehog just sort of waddles past in the front garden. I mean, is that something that, what should people do if they see a hedgehog out in the day?
I think if you do see a hedgehog, it's whether it looks distressed or not. I mean, it's very hard to tell saying that though. So if you're at all worried about the hedgehog, it's worth getting in touch with a rescue centre or the British Hedgehog Society, who happily will give you any advice and also information on your closest rescue if you don't know where it is. But quite often, if it is in distress, it's a good idea to put it in a safe spot, the hedgehog. If I say it's just flat out on your lawn or something, or walking in circles, or just acting a little bit odd, you could get a box, cardboard box, and put it in there with a old towel or something, put it somewhere quiet and seek out advice. Would be the best step to go.
I think also at this time of year, especially, we had the driest May on record, and so the ground's going to be quite dry. It's going to be quite difficult for them to kind of dig in the soil, look for the worms and the slugs and some of the other insects. So, it might be that you do want to give it a bit of a helping hand, a bit of supplementary feeding. You can buy various hedgehog food in the shops, but you can also give them like meaty cat or dog food. And also when it's so hot as well and there's not much water or not much rain around, it's worth just putting a shallow bowl of water out for them as well. And then they probably go about their business quite happily, really.
Because traditionally, I think when I was a kid, we used to, growing up in sort of South London, we used to have hedgehogs coming to the garden, and my mum used to put out sort of milk and bread for them, which I think is an absolute no-no. I think you just don't do that because they're lactose intolerant, aren't they? And they need protein from the insects. So bread has actually got no nutritional value for them at all. I mean, it's just pure carbs. So I think it's like wet cat and dog food. I think it is suitable. And obviously, we need to think about helping them, because there has been a huge decline in the population of hedgehogs, hasn't there, over the last few years?
Yeah, I can confirm. I mean, in the last 20 years, we've seen a decline of over 30%. So that's a third of the population gone in towns. And it's even worse in the countryside, because in rural areas you've seen a decline of 50%. Now, this are figures taken from the latest State of British Hedgehogs report, which anyone can look up and find out about, from 2018. And so there is, like I say, estimated probably less than 1 million hedgehogs left in this country.
Because used to, I mean, I think it was estimated in the 1950s there were sort of 36 million, wasn't there? And now we're less than 1 million. I mean, it's a really catastrophic decline. So, I mean, what are the reasons for that decline? What's driving that?
I think it's one of the things is well, habitat loss, where maybe in the countryside hedgerows have been taken out, those type of things, changes in farming practices. But in our gardens, we've also been one of the reasons for the hedgehogs declining. So the way we're gardening, using slug pellets, things like that, because obviously the hedgehogs are eating the slugs. If you poison the slugs, there's obviously not the food about, but also you could then be poisoning the hedgehogs. And also that more gardens are enclosed now. So they've got a fence around them, they've got a brick wall. People are wanting an easier life, so they're putting flags down, putting artificial grass, those type of things. So it's harder for the hedgehogs to travel around. And if they can get in a garden, then there's no kind of suitable places where the insects are going to be. So they're really struggling for food.
And I think sometimes as well, badgers have been fingered as a culprit in the decline of hedgehogs as well, haven't they?
I say badgers do get a bad press, don't they, for a lot of things, and they are actually hedgehogs' main predator. But as I've always said to people, they've always lived together in the past, and it's only recently we've had this big decline. So you can't really peg it all on the badger.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are probably other factors at play. And obviously, I think so many of those drivers of decline, whether it is fragmentation, habitat and loss, or garden practices, or loss of hedgerows, or even predation, or attacks from badgers, domestic dogs, for example. I mean, all those drivers are still in place, aren't they, as well? So what can people do to help our sort of beleaguered hedgehog population? We've already touched on a couple of things, but firstly, in their gardens, if they're lucky enough to have a bit of green space of their own, are there any best practice tips that we can share?
I think we are really a nation of garden lovers, you could say, in that we do spend a lot of time making our gardens better for ourselves. And I think just actually putting aside a section for wildlife would make a big difference. So that would be like leaving a little bit area that would go a little bit wild, so that'd be a little bit longer grass, letting some wildflowers take over, preferably in a quieter section of your garden, and that's where the wildlife can feel safe. And you might get a hedgehog actually making its own nest back there as it feels safe. So just really being less tidy in one section of your garden, letting some leaves pile up.
Yeah, I was reading the hedgehogs particularly like apple and cherry leaves and hawthorn and honeysuckle prunings.
I think another thing that you can do as well is create a hedgehog hole and create a hedgehog highway. So basically a hedgehog hole is, well, what it says, a hole that a hedgehog can get through. But whether that's chopping or cutting a section of your fence to create this hole, and they say about a 13 centimetre square. Obviously, if you don't want to chop your fence at the bottom of it, you can create a little tunnel that goes underneath into your neighbour's garden. And I think it's about encouraging your neighbours to do the same. So it's great that the hedgehogs can get into your garden, and you might need more than one hedgehog hole to. It's all about connecting the gardens together and the areas and the spaces together. So there's a thing called Hedgehog Street that you can either submit your sightings to and find out where hedgehogs have been seen. So I didn't know there was any hedgehogs in Dunstable, but I went on there this week and I downloaded the app. So it's called Hedgehog Street, and there's this little map that shows you where they've been sighted and actually how many holes have been pledged. And so it's a good way to find out what your community and your neighbourhood's doing. And also there's like lots of resources there that you can download, letters and posters to print out. So it's all about, speaking to your neighbours, getting the community to help hedgehogs. It's great what one person can do, but if you can do it en masse in one area, then you really are gonna help the hedgehogs.
Yeah, there's obviously the stuff that you can do in your own garden, but obviously not everyone has their own space. And we've already, I think, sort of mentioned that hedgehogs will roam far and wide. So yeah, absolutely. So there's lots of ways to get involved. I think in your neighbourhood more generally, become a hedgehog champion. Let's say Hedgehog Street has some great resources that you can download there, whether it's posters you can put up in your window, or a local bus stop, or a local shop, whether leaflets you can pop through your neighbours' doors. So yeah, there's a huge amount of resources out there, isn't there?
I'd just like to mention that a lot of people don't like to open up their gardens because they have pet dogs, or the children, for some reason, they don't want to make a hole or something like that. So I would say for those, I think, consider your front garden. A lot of people forget about their front garden, but wildlife does use it, especially if you've just got a little bit of grass or a bit of hedge out front. It's perfect for hedgehogs, and doesn't mean you can miss out on hedgehogs. You can just do something out front. And another way of getting into your garden is obviously under the gate at the side of your property. Again, another one, they can come in and out that way. You don't have to make holes in every fence in your property.
I think another big thing is think about what else is in your garden. Have you got, I don't know, strawberry netting up, those type of things that the hedgehog can get tangled up in. Litter is a big problem for hedgehogs, not just in gardens, but in the wider countryside. There was something I saw on Facebook's rescue centre up north had shared a picture of a hedgehog that had got stuck inside a Pringle can that had been dumped in a park somewhere or in the countryside, and they couldn't do anything for it. It ended up dying. So I think it's really important to think about, litter and those type of things in your garden and in the wider countryside that, could be killing not just hedgehogs, but all wildlife in general, especially when it blows around and that type of thing. So I think, we can all be a bit more responsible, and if there's no litter bin, or if the litter bin's full, then just take it home and discard of it when you get back. I think, that's quite an important message at the minute as well, when so many people are out and about using our green spaces and our nature reserves. It's just about being a little bit more considerate to the wildlife that's there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's a really important message at this time. And I think just one last one, I think helping hedgehogs, I think all the things that you could do for hedgehogs as well are also going to help a wide range of other plants and animals and birds as well. So do check out our website. If you go into the Wild About Gardens website, so wildaboutgardens.org.uk, you can download for free fantastic brochure the Wildlife Trust have put together with the Royal Horticultural Society on all things hedgehogs. Lots of interesting facts and figures about hedgehogs, what you can do in your garden to help hedgehogs. So go on and download that. If you have any questions about today's discussion, or more generally about the podcast, of any topics you'd like us to cover, then please do get in touch via the usual social media channels using the hashtag BBOWT podcast. Thank you, Kate Sheard and Tara Higgs, for coming on to discuss hedgehogs today. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.
You have been listening to the BBOWT podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. For more information about your local wildlife trust and how to join us, please visit www.bbowt.org.uk.